Hey folks, here it is, the last week of February in the Piedmont of North Carolina, and tomorrow it's supposed to hit 70 degrees. It's only supposed to be in the 50s for the next couple nights, so it makes you think about planting something. And planting season around here won't be long at all. Now this year is kind of a strange year. Everybody talks about input prices, and we all know that input prices are very high. We also know, at least in our part of the country, prices received are still very, very good. $16 beans, $7 corn. You gotta be thinking hard about what you're going to plant and how you're going to plant it. So for this video, we're going to talk just a little bit about some ways we can modify expense. We're going to talk a little bit about ways we can adjust expense through fertility, and just a little bit about budget as well. I'll be speaking primarily about corn, but I think most of these things will hold for soybeans too. You know, with corn, seed has gotten quite a bit higher. I talked with a local dealer the other day, and he said $250 a bag corn is about average, and some guys are probably planting some corn that costs more than that. So, you know, on our red uplands, that's what I want to speak mostly to, where we have higher stress levels, and this year they're predicting that we may be a little bit warmer and drier than last year, so we might have more stress. We need to be thinking about modifying some expense, and seeding rate is one way to do that. If we will back up maybe to 25, 26, 27,000 and use a variety that will also give us some good flex. If we get better weather than predicted, we can still make a good crop. If the weather is as predicted with more stress, drought, dry weather, then we have fewer plants out there. We can adjust and make better use of the available water reserves, and maybe cut some expense without hurting yield too bad. All right, second thing I want to talk about is nutrient management. And I think that's one of the biggest things that farmers are talking about right now, is the price of fertilizers, and in particular nitrogen. And with a corn crop, nitrogen is one of your biggest expenses. So we talked a minute ago about reducing some expense with plant population, and now we're going to do the same thing about nutrient management, and I think it all starts with a good soil sample. If I don't know what I have, it's going to be hard for me to modify my fertility program. But here in the Piedmont, I've recently looked through 20 years worth of soil samples provided by NCDA, and our P and K levels have just continued to climb over the last 20 years. And basically, we're putting out more than we're using. And we've done that for several years in a row, and I don't expect for that to quit anytime soon. But what it does say is we have some excess fertility out there that we can make do this year. So if you have a soil sample, you know what you have. Maybe you change the way you apply some things. Instead of applying phosphate as a broadcast, maybe you put it all in the band, just get a little starter effect. But there are some things we can do with nutrition that we can cut some costs, but it starts with a soil sample. So if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and get on out there, get some soil samples, get them sent off, and find out what you have. All right, last thing we'll talk about is expenses. You know, it's again one of the strangest years I've ever seen, with input prices very, very high, above anything I've ever seen in my career, but prices are also exceedingly good. So, you know, the only way we're going to know when we're making a profit and where to sell is if we know what it costs us to produce a bushel. So I'm going to encourage you, if you haven't already done it, sit down, gather some prices up, find out what it's going to cost you to make an acre of corn. If you can plant it for $700 an acre and you're getting $7 a bushel, that's a 100 bushel break even. And there's money to be made on everything above and beyond that. If you don't know what it's costing you, then you don't quite know what your break even is. You don't know where you can sell at a profit. And I've seen way too many instances of people waiting for another nickel, and they lost a quarter and they lost profit. If you know what you got in the crop, you know where to sell. So again, sit down, spend a little time, make you a quick budget, and stick with that thing. You know, I think I've said it 2 or 3 times in this video, but this is a strange year. But it's not a year that says we cannot make some money on the farm if we pick our spots correctly. You know, if you're a bean grower in our part of the world, you know you have some fields where the deer damage is so high that you cannot plant beans there. Maybe that's where you need to put corn if everything works out. It's an option. Corn is selling high. We have the poultry mills around here, so I have not given up on corn. It's got yield potential and it's got profit potential. And I encourage you to think hard about what you're doing in 2022 It's not a disaster yet. We all think it might be, but it's not a disaster yet, and it's got potential to end up being pretty good with these prices we're dealing with.